Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Mark Bell's Power Project podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Element Electrolytes. Nsima, can you tell me why electrolytes are so important for a keto, low carb, or even a carnivore diet?
Well, first off, you guys know that Mark has done almost like every single diet on the planet. He's done low carb, he's done keto, he's done carnivore. He's done carnivore a lot. And he mentioned to me how electrolytes have been pretty damn beneficial for him, as they have for me. So follow me here, guys. We're going to go on a little ride of why electrolytes, specifically element electrolytes, are so important for low carb, keto, or carnivore athletes. So when you eat low carb, your insulin levels drop. Low insulin means the lower production of a hormone, aldosterone. Now, aldosterone is made in the kidneys, and that helps you retain sodium. You see, sodium is super important. So low aldosterone on a keto diet or carnivore diet makes you lose sodium at a rapid rate. And when you lose too much sodium, you develop low sodium symptoms like headaches, low energy, muscle cramps, and insomnia, aka the keto flu. In turn, you feel like crap, you cramp up, and you don't perform well, which is why you need some electrolytes in your life. It will make a big difference, as it has for Mark, as it has for me, as it has for Andrew. Check it out.
If you guys want to thrive on a low carb, a keto, or even a carnivore diet, please head over to drinklmnt.com/power project. Make sure you guys check out the value bundles. You get to pick your 3 favorite flavors, and then you even get a free box after that. So again, please head over to drinklmnt.com/power project.
Hello.
What's up?
Everything, man. Just got back from a Trump rally.
Where was that, by the way?
Great way to start off the show, huh? Everyone's like, click. So just clicked off the show.
If you are voting for Trump, hit that like button. If you are not voting for Trump, hit that like button.
That's right. It was in Nevada. We were in, I don't know where the hell I was in Nevada, but it was somewhere.
I believe your Twitter said Carson City.
Oh, yeah, there you go. Carson City. I have a squat rack in Carson City.
You have a, what do you mean?
I used to train somebody with Ben Alderman. The guy's name eludes me for the moment, but he owns a gym in Carson City, and I just had an extra squat rack, and so I gave it to him. It's like one of our original ones. It's a yellow squat rack.
Oh, wow.
That was with us from the very beginning. I need to go back and take it. I need to take it back.
This is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Let's see, where'd it go?
So shout out to Trump Jr. and some of his peeps for getting me some tickets, and luckily enough, my brother and I were able to get Donald Trump's attention, and he pointed to our jackness.
That's so funny, dude.
Yeah, I posted it on Twitter. We're playing it right now on our show right now.
Like, hey.
Yeah. I don't know, like, if he, got like informed, like, before I went up there, like, hey, there's some like kind of like, I guess what his security guys said that, because all his security guys are fans.
Oh, really?
And one guy actually was like, I was watching Zaragoza. He's like, I was just watching it the other day. It was like all the security people, they're all really jacked.
Yeah.
Really jacked, where you're like one guy's bigger than the next. You're like, holy shit.
Though they better be if they're trying to protect the president.
I know, right? And they're like I saw one guy, and he's like, oh, what's up? He's like, Bell Brothers. And he like took a picture with us, and he's like, you got to go over there and see that guy. See that Jack guy over there? Like, you got to go see him. He's a huge fan. And I'm like, okay. And we went over to that guy. And then the next guy would be like, you got to go over to that guy over there. He's an even bigger fan. Like, everybody was huge. We're like, what's going on here?
That's crazy. Awesome. That's so funny.
But they said that we think he likes it that way. We think that he likes everybody to be jacked. So it's some sort of prerequisite to get the job, I guess.
You have to be, though. Like, you can't be like,
you gotta have a look.
You gotta look intimidating, or else, I mean, shit.
And then he had a Secret Service guy with him that probably was like 6'8". This guy was a real beast. Mm-hmm. Like, damn. It was pretty cool. I mean, I don't know, just to see, like, I got to see Trump Jr. like 2 weeks ago, and it's just way different. Like, this is the fucking president. Mm-hmm. And the precautions that they take. I mean, he flew over top on the Air Force One deal, and I think it was too big to land at the airport that we were at. I mean, the thing's massive. It's a very small airport. And with the amount of people there, I don't think they were trying to land it there. But so he landed somewhere else and then drove in. But there's like, helicopters flying overhead. They keep kind of circling around, making sure everything's cool. And there's fucking snipers like up on these, like on top of these buildings. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh, look, those guys are like setting up. They're probably getting like camera and then you're like, oh, you're like, oh, no. Okay.
Setting up guns.
Yeah. You're like, wow. And it's kind of intimidating because you're like, they probably zoomed in on me a couple times, like to check.
Is that Mark Bell?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. They probably do. They probably do check on each.
Signaling to the other sniper.
Yeah.
Like,
this guy is suspicious, right? They probably kind of zoom in on each person to kind of give them a once over, and kind of look at everybody.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, did the thought like go through your head where like they're definitely working for the president, right? Like, mm-hmm. Right? We all like check their IDs.
Right. Yeah, we know these are the right people in the right spots.
Oh man.
Yeah, and they're all communicating, with each other on the earpieces and stuff. And
dude, it didn't look like there was like. I don't mind it, but it looked like everyone was just kind of packed together, right?
Oh, there's thousands of people.
COVID doesn't win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no one cares.
I saw that crowd. I was like,
so funny.
Yeah,
it's Nevada though.
Yeah, it's true. Are there different restrictions in Nevada? Like,
there's a little less.
That's nice.
But I'm just curious, and just because like I don't follow anything with politics, but like, what's the point of a rally? Because I would assume everyone that's going is already fired up to vote for Trump. Mm-hmm. By going to this,
and a large percentage of people already voted too.
Right. So like, is it just to, I don't know, show that you support him so that way you can maybe convince other people, or is it?
Well, what people will say about Trump in particular is they'll just say he's narcissistic and that he just loves to hear himself talk. Mm-hmm. But I think he just likes to work. I think he's a workaholic. Mm-hmm. I think he just, that's what I saw from him. And just, doing all these different, he's there. He talked for like 90 minutes or almost 2 hours, and he came from somewhere else in California on the same day and stuff. So I think I don't think he knows any other way than to like be forceful, and you see that with everything that he does. Sometimes it's to a fault. Sometimes it's not, not in his best interest, but I think that's just the way that he does stuff. So the rally is really just to, I think, obviously you're not trying to like sway people because they're already for you, right? I think it's just to hype people up, get people excited, and I think it's just it's more practice, and it's more of him just getting his information out there. Because he talked, I was telling you, like he just talked kind of randomly about all kinds of stuff. It wasn't really, there was politicalness behind it, but it wasn't like politically charged. He wasn't volatile. He wasn't aggressive. Like he was super passive and just went up there and just talked. And yeah, every once in a while he would, throw in a joke and mess around. But like I was telling you, he's talking about like water pressure, and he was just like,
water pressure?
Yeah. He's like, how frustrating is it, to wash your dishes and like they don't get clean, he's like, you ever wonder why that happens more and more nowadays? And then he talked about taking a shower and
why?
He talked about like how many times people have to flush the toilet to get the toilet to work and all these different things. And the reason why he talked about this is because of all the restrictions that they put on these products to try to conserve water. And he's like, that's what California is going to be hit with next, is you guys will have a water, he's like, they do it just about every year. Mm-hmm. He's like, they threaten you with a drought. He's like, you have plenty of water. But one of the reasons why he said that it happens is because you have to run your dishwasher 5 times just to get it to work correctly.
Damn.
And so,
okay, I get it.
And he was just like, oh, he's like, you got to do what you got to do. He's like, you got to take those restrictions off or take those restrictors off. And he was just, pointing to stuff like that. And then he's, obviously he's selling himself. So he's like, talking about how he talks to different energy companies and how he's pulling all these strings and pulling all these levers and getting all this work done. It's hard to say, it's hard to tell who's doing what or who's doing anything. And so, but when it comes to politics, I think that's why a lot of people choose to just be like, you know what, I'm just going to stay out of it because I don't know what's true. And I try to follow some of it, and I don't have any idea what's true. I don't have any, I do like Trump. I've been a fan of him since I was a kid. My whole family has been. I've talked about that before. And some people get charged up about that, but I don't know what's true about him, whether he's done things great or whether he's done things. I don't have any real knowledge to know. And I don't know how I would know, because I don't know what resource I would go to find out, because everything seems to be so biased one way or the other. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. So moving forward, next topic, now that political news is over, we have Nick Shaw on the podcast today. Pretty fired up.
Yeah. He's been around for a long time, and he got RP Strength going. I think a lot of people have heard of that before. He's helped a ton of people with their nutrition, and also with programming. And then what I think is great is that he's taken a lot of other great coaches and surrounded himself with those great coaches, and they've helped thousands upon thousands of people, and he's turned it into an awesome and profitable business. So it'd be great to kind of talk to him a little bit about the business side of it too, and figure out how the hell he got it all going.
Yeah, I heard about RP Strength years ago. I started seeing a lot of it. People on Instagram post about it. I'm guessing athletes that were like working with them, but it's really grown a lot since. It's like crazy. I didn't realize how big they were until recently. Like I knew they were big, but not like tens of thousands of athletes, like people using the app big.
Yeah. And I know, like, you know, algorithms and whatnot, but like as far as social media goes, but I just feel like every single time I open up some kind of social media, I see something with the RP diet or the RP strength program. And dude, it's nuts. I've been using it for the past, I think, 2 weeks now.
How do you like it?
It's very intuitive. I like it a lot. I don't want to say anything bad about them, but it is really cool to be able to text you to be like, hey, I'm not gaining weight, or I am gaining weight, versus this one. It kind of takes your whole week and it not averages it, but like it looks at the data and it's like, hey, like this previous week, it's like you didn't gain any weight and your meals have been on point. We're going to have to add more, you know, calories to your every single meal. And it's not like when you track something, it's not it's not necessarily if it fits your macros, it kind of tells you what you need to be eating. It's really cool. Like per meal versus, you know, per, I don't know, like just daily caloric intake.
So it works a little bit like a coach. Like if you give the product the information, then it spits it back out to you.
Correct. Yeah.
I think that's a big mistake that a lot of people make with coaches. Is they don't give them enough information. You know, like someone has someone like Nsima program for them and don't tell them that they hurt their back. And they're like, I haven't seen much progress on my deadlift. And they're not sharing with you everything that's going on.
What's up, guys?
Hey.
What's happening?
Not too much. All right.
Great to have you on the show today.
Yeah, likewise, man. Thanks for having me on.
And congratulations with all the success. We've heard a lot about RP Strength over the years. How long you guys been in business? How long you been going for?
We have been around since about 2012. So a while.
Yeah. What got you started?
I'm just a meathead. So is Dr. Mike, man. You guys had him on not too long ago. We were just a couple of meatheads. We met in college and we just love to lift. I'm sure you guys know it. I mean, it just kind of drives your passion. That's what gets you started. And it's no secret. We liked writing diet and training programs for people. And that's what we said we were going to do. And we didn't really have any huge grand ambitions. It just sort of grew naturally. And hey, here we are, you know, almost a decade later. Knock on wood.
Did you see some holes in the fitness community maybe where you thought maybe things could be done a little bit better?
Yeah. So one of our things early on was, you know, Dr. Mike, he's got the PhD in sport physiology, all that good stuff. So he had a pretty good idea that if we paid a little bit more attention to the evidence-based recommendations when it comes to diet and training, that, hey, maybe that's a little bit better route to go, maybe a little bit more efficient. And we always wanted to stick with that. That's kind of always been our thing. And it seems to have worked really well for people. And we actually were in New York City for a while as trainers. And we noticed all these really, really talented people, the way they were doing things. And we're like, wow, that's really interesting. It's like really different from what we're doing. And that just really drew our interest even more. It was like, well, what are they doing? Why are they doing it that way? You know, could they potentially get better results if they tweak something, if they did something different? And so that kind of led our curiosity. Again, this was like 2009 or so when we were in New York City. So a while back. Before
nutrition and training were even invented.
And nowadays, yeah, for sure. It seems like that. One of the funny things too is, when we got started, I don't even think Instagram existed. Like, I'm not even sure. Like that's how long ago it was.
You can't even think, like, it's hard to think back now, right? What gave you the idea for the name Renaissance Periodization?
So hindsight's 2020, right? Maybe we would have picked a different name had we known. Because, like, can you even spell it? I can barely spell it myself. Dr. Mike can barely spell it.
Yeah, I had a hard time sending out the email because I'm like, I'm gonna mess this up.
I know
sure.
there's a couple of U's in there and an I somewhere.
Yeah, totally. You got me. Like, that's why I go to Google and I type in the first couple letters, and thank God it auto populates. I'm like, okay, good. I'll click that one. But that's why I went with RP strength. So real quick story there. Renaissance, kind of like the rebirth. And again, we wanted to be evidence-based. We thought that there was a lot of people just kind of doing things because, whatever reason, whatever it was. And so that was part of it. That's where Renaissance came from. The periodization is a bit cooler because it's sort of the logical sequencing of different phases to, set the next one up for success, right? So if you want to compete in powerlifting, you're probably not doing sets of 10, the day before, the week before you're competing, right? I mean, I don't know, hopefully not or whatever, but that's kind of the idea. That's where periodization came from.
Rewinding real quick back to New York, you mentioned that the people there that were doing things differently. And it seemed like when you said that, you said they were doing things differently in a positive manner, or did you mean that they were doing things differently? Like, oh, that was weird, different.
Both.
Okay.
Both. So this was, a decade. This is a decade ago. So we didn't really know because we're like, they look better than us. So obviously they must be doing something right. And we're like, well, what is that something? And then that's what drew the curiosity to sort of look into it more and be like, is it better? Is it worse? Maybe there's some things that we can pick up from these people because, well, they look a lot better than us. They're a lot stronger than us too. So again, it'd be silly to kind of step back and be like, oh, your stuff's totally stupid. Like, we're going to ignore all of it. There's probably some good stuff we can gain from it. So it's kind of both.
What kind of stuff did you pick up then? Like, I'm just real curious about that.
So I guess just, sticking to the basic compound movements, right? Like you would just watch these guys train and, they weren't using a lot of cables and all this accessory stuff. I mean, sometimes they would, but, the first and foremost thing they were always doing was they were hitting the big lifts. And it's like, okay, well, that kind of fits with what we thought was probably the best idea. And we're like, okay, that's a good sign. We kind of accidentally stumbled upon the idea of deloading sort of by accident. And we were like, hey, if we keep going, really heavy deadlifts a few weeks in a row, man, we start to fall off and feel like crap. Mm-hmm. And we're like, but, last week we kind of scaled it down because we were feeling like crap. And now this next week, we actually did really well. We're like, I wonder if there's something to that. And, I just start talking to more people and, talking to more powerlifters. And they're like, yeah, sometimes we'll do that. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's something we need to think about. And then, Dr. Mike went on to get his PhD at East Tennessee State. And, that's where he learned a lot more. And it's like, well, that's actually a pretty well-supported thing. It's a good idea to actually do.
When did you guys look around and think that maybe this would be an app versus, because I'm sure you maybe started out thinking that you would help coach people. And then all of a sudden, I don't know, technology maybe caught up to what you guys were thinking in your head. But like, what was the transition there? If there was a transition, I should say.
There's always a transition. Yeah. So we started with one-on-one coaching, then that's all we did. That's kind of all we thought we were going to do. And then we did an ebook and we're like, wow, this is really interesting. And funny enough, like we actually sold it through Chad Wesley Smith's site in like 2014. This was a real long time ago. We didn't even really have like our own site where we could host all that stuff. Like that's how not even advanced we were at that time. Mm. And again, that sort of opened our eyes like, hey, this digital product thing is probably a pretty good route to go. And so then we started to pivot like, well, how can we take this one-on-one coaching model that we're doing, but obviously it's not super scalable, right? Because if you're a coach, like how many clients can you work with? Let's say it's 100, which is a lot. Mm-hmm. Like how do you go from hundreds to potentially thousands or, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands? So that was what we were trying to figure out when we go, hey, let's try this idea of the diet templates. And we created these really ugly Excel files in like 2015. People kind of liked them. They started to get results. We're like, we might be onto something. And that was sort of setting the stage for, okay, well, this is a good model. We kind of know it's going to work. We kind of knew long-term, maybe the app is a good way to go. I don't know if you guys know much about software development. It is tough. It is long and hard and It is tough. I'll just say that. And so again, like we thought early on, it just took forever to build though. It's a really complicated thing.
When companies like yourself started to come around and people started talking about programming, I was so confused. I got to be honest, because I was like, why the fuck do people need help with their workout? Like, I kind of didn't get it, to be totally honest. And when I heard the word programming, I was like, do people need help with their computer? Like, what's programming even mean? Because like when I was growing up in the sport and in powerlifting and bodybuilding, you just got like shown something by somebody else. You had like a mentor, you had like a guide, and that's how you found out about it. But what sucked about that is it was like secretive and you couldn't really learn. And so like a lot of the stuff that you guys have done and some other companies that have come before you and since after you have really shown people the way, and you give people a great product. You deliver a product where not only are they lifting kind of under your tutelage, but they're learning the reasons why they're doing it. And I think that that's really important. They're getting programming and they're seeing like, okay, I'm doing this for 2 weeks. And in the third week, I kind of, have a deload and so on. And they learn their nutrition, they learn their diet. And so they learn what I think is really beneficial is they learn tools that they can carry on. Because if you just, it's kind of like the teach the man to fish type thing. If you just show someone like a couple of movements and stuff like that, they can't really, it's going to be very difficult for them to grow. It's going to be very difficult for them to learn and for them to have the knowledge base to really move forward and to get the health and nutrition, the strength that they need. But with programming and having somebody kind of guiding you through it after you do it for a while, it just gets more and more, it gets easier to understand it as you move forward.
Yeah, totally. Again, that was kind of the whole idea of the templates. So it's like a do-it-yourself approach. Again, not everyone can afford coaching. Not everyone's going to stick with coaching for years or, even more than a couple of months, because it's just not a realistic option. But again, if you give people, maybe they do start with coaching, but now they know that they work with a coach. Now they sort of know, all right, well, now I can do it myself. Why do I want to pay $200 a month if I can, use an app or a template that's, roughly $10 a month or $15 a month? Like, it just makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I think you nailed it. Sounds great.
In terms of the software programming aspect of things, you said that was just like a very arduous process. What kind of people did you guys have to bring on for that to happen? And what did you did you have to learn a lot of stuff on the software end of things, or did you just bring people in to help build out the idea? I know it's probably super complicated to try to explain, but if you can, help us out here.
It takes people much, much smarter than myself. Much smarter than myself. So we basically, and it's a funny story because we failed a couple of times. It took a really long time, and you just run into people that will sort of promise you everything in the world and they just can't deliver. And then it just gets really frustrating. And what happened, this funny story, was eventually we had someone that was using RP for a really long time, and he reached out to us and he was like, hey, I'm into software. I think I can help you guys out. And at this point we didn't really know what to do because things just weren't going well, just having a hard time with it, because it's a pretty complicated process when you get into all the algorithms behind the scenes. And Dr. Mike sort of does all that stuff. But it was really funny because he knew what he wanted, because he was a lifter. He understood it. And so that made the process a lot easier, because we ran into a lot of software folks that didn't know anything about fitness. And so you're trying to explain to them what exactly you want something to do. It just goes way over their head. And they're it was really difficult. So yeah, I don't necessarily have a ton to do with that aspect, just more like the business aspect. But yeah, it's really long. It's really complicated. It's going to take some, data science. It's going to take some, just engineers basically. So we've got a team of engineers that work on it, because what happens is an app basically becomes like a living organism. It's not like you just build it and you set it and forget it and that's it. It's no, there's always stuff coming up. Apple, Google are always throwing in new updates. You can't just sit back and go, oh, I'll hope for the best. It doesn't work like that. So you got to be on top of it all the time.
Yeah, you mentioned going with Chad Wesley Smith early on. I think, this is a a learning process for a lot of people when they're getting into business. You're not sure what to do. And you mentioned you guys didn't feel like you were advanced enough to really go out and do it on your own. Looking back at things like that, would you have just maybe done things on your own? Or do you think it was good to kind of learn to go through that process to, have someone like Chad to kind of maybe learn from, pick up some information from, and then be able to move on from there?
It was perfect to have someone like him because he was already doing it. He was already selling ebooks and stuff. I mean, you guys know Chad really well.
Yeah, Nsima kicked his ass.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I can bring that name up.
No, we love Chad.
For sure. Yeah, he's a super nice dude, and we're still really good friends with him now. And yeah, it was really great because he kind of showed us the ropes. He's like, "Hey, here's kind of how we do it. Like, here's how we price things." And we were like, "All right, we'll take your word for it. Like, let's run. Let's just kind of get it out there and see how it goes." And it's funny looking back, like our original ebook. I look back at the quality now and I laugh. And I'm just like, "Oh, that was the information was good. Don't get me wrong. Like the quality of it was not so great." I don't know. Like, Mark, do you think that when you look back at like some of the first stuff you ever designed, you're like, "Huh."
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're always working on trying to make a better product and make things better for people. I mean, the first batch of slingshots I made, they turned people's skin red, which was not the desired result that we were looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, it's definitely good to, befriend or have a mentor like that can show you the ropes. I think is hugely valuable.
Having been, in the industry for a long time and being around fitness for as long as you have, and you helped a lot of people get healthier. What are some of your thoughts with, without being like controversial or anything, but like, what are your thoughts on like COVID-19 and some things that people can safeguard themselves with in terms of fitness, just to be healthier, not to necessarily escape COVID necessarily, but to escape viruses and just to be healthy overall?
Yeah. So again, there's some like basic stuff, and maybe we'll get into this a tad later, but there's the whole idea of like internal versus external locus of control. Like if you have more of an internal locus of control, like you're going to take charge, you're going to do things, you want to take action because you believe you can influence certain outcomes. And so again, like if you have that mindset and you are into fitness, like you're already probably healthier than the normal average person. Again, if you are being mindful of your nutrition, again, one way or the other, right? Like as long as you're eating mostly high quality foods, you're on the right track. If you're exercising, you're on the right track. You're probably going to have a stronger immune system. And it's funny because you just don't see that anywhere in sort of the mainstream media. Like they're never talking about that. It's like, why aren't we talking more about that? Because this is something that would help pretty much universally every single person out there. I don't know. Like it's always been weird for me. I don't know. Maybe people just don't want to do it because it's hard. That's maybe a little bit different conversation to have, but it's a no-brainer. We should be telling everyone to sort of get out and exercise. It doesn't even have to be crazy exercise. That's the thing. Get out and walk. Go walk outdoors. I mean, one, you get in nature. That's probably good by itself. And then you're doing some activity, and don't eat a bunch of junk food. I mean, that seems like common sense, but that's easier said than done, I suppose.
How about the external locus of control you're talking about? Is that more so that you don't have control of like external outcomes, or like what does that mean exactly?
Yeah, it sort of means like things happen to you. Nothing you do can really impact that result. A good example might be, so if you think back to like World War I, and so you're like in trench warfare, you don't have much say over what's happening. You're being bombarded, you're being shelled, you're just kind of sitting there hoping for the best, basically. Whereas like if you could take more action, again, like maybe plan to go around, the flank, or like do something. But if you're told, hey, just sit here while they're going to, bomb us, basically, well, that kind of sucks because you're just hoping for the best and you have no control over it. And that usually gives people more of this feeling of like helplessness. And then if you feel you can't do anything to impact your outcome, what are you going to do? You're probably not going to take action in the first place.
How important is it to get around like-minded people? Because you and Mike seem very, very similar in a lot of ways. Just in when Mike was on the show, it was he made everything sound so simple, and it really is. And unfortunately, I think people want some complicated answer about, don't eat carbs, or they want some sort of like, I don't know, magic thing to happen. But it is, a lot of this is very simple when you break it down. You treat yourself well, and you kind of have normal, healthy practices, and you're going to be a pretty damn healthy person. How important has it been for you to surround yourself with like-minded people for your business?
Yeah, it's been great. Mike's a super talented guy, super smart guy. One of his strengths is the ability to take this, what can be seen as complex, break it down into really simple information. Like, that's always been one of his strengths. He was a professor. I used to sit in on some of his classes here and there. And it was great to see, because I don't know. I remember sitting in college, and sometimes that stuff would just go way over my head. I'd be bored. I'd be, thinking about 10 other things, but, he's pretty engaging, all that good stuff. So it's super important. And, truth be told, like, Mike's been my number one mentor. So, he sort of recruited me way back in college to get into powerlifting. And I was like, oh, okay, like, that sounds fine. Maybe I'll like it. Maybe I won't. But again, he's kind of always been there. So yeah, it's funny. It's not the first time I've heard that. People like to say that all the time. Like, if he's ever been on something and then I go on, they're like, hey, sound a lot alike. And I guess I take that as a compliment, because I have a lot of respect for Mike.
When, COVID kind of started, I guess. Yeah. When COVID was like coming up this year, did you guys do anything within the app to, I guess, I know it works on programming, then there's also nutritional aspect, but were there any notifications for people in terms of just, I don't know, things on potential mental wellness or whatever? Or was it just like still focused on these habits? Because generally, probably people that use the app will also have healthier natural habits, so things won't affect them as much. But did you guys make any sort of changes because of Corona?
Maybe not necessarily in the app so much, but maybe just like educational content through, social media or a website. And, one example was, again, a lot of people are sort of scared to go out to grocery stores. And so we were, trying to tell people, like, well, you don't necessarily have to go to the grocery store every day and get fresh food or something. Like, if you have some canned foods or whatever, like, you're going to be okay. And you can totally get away with that for, a few weeks, maybe even a few months, because again, like March and April, like, there's just mass panic everywhere, right? Like, no one even wanted to go to the stores, anything like that. And so, we kind of thought, well, all right, well, let's work with that. We don't want to scare people anymore, right? Like, you got the news enough for that. But again, just like, if you have some stuff at home, like, you could probably work with that. Here are some options. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? So consistency is more important than perfection. So just sort of backing that up, I think, was really helpful for people.
You mentioned earlier about, some things like people just maybe thinking things are too hard. What are some simple things that people can do to just kind of pick away at their health? Just kind of, you mentioned walking. Like, are there a couple other things that people can do? Maybe they can cut something out, or maybe they can add something to their day to make things just a little easier.
Yeah, be active a couple times a week at least. Again, it doesn't have to be super, super crazy. Again, because we're probably all more into lifting and going a little bit harder, but boy, we're the minority for the most part. There's a lot of people out there that don't do anything. So again, it's just, and I think sometimes people see that and they sort of see, folks like us, and they're like, oh, well, you got to be really hardcore into it to like get results. And it's like, that's not the case at all. If you can just do something, again, like, I got my mom into, walking at the start. And then I actually like bought her a CrossFit membership, because like, one, she's never lifted in her life. She's like 60. And two, I knew she would like the social aspect of it. Like, she likes going to the gym because, she gets to chat with her friends basically. So again, it's just something like that. It doesn't have to be super crazy. So that's maybe on the exercise front. And again, yeah, I would love to tell people to lift a couple times a week, but what if you don't like lifting? For whatever reason? Again, I don't know why someone wouldn't like lifting, right? Like, preaching to the choir here. But again, like, maybe it's an exercise class. Maybe it's yoga. Maybe it's just walking, like whatever it is, something's going to be better than nothing. And then on the nutrition front, it's, mostly stick to basic whole foods. Don't eat a bunch of junk food. And if you don't eat a bunch of junk food, boy, it's really hard to overeat and to kind of gain weight and get into worse health conditions.
Now, I'm curious, like, with the amount of users that you guys have, and I'm assuming it's in the tens of thousands at this point, right?
Right.
That's a fair statement to make.
Right. So how does it, you said it's like a living organism. Does it continue to evolve in the way that it does work with individuals? Or is it at a point now that it can take anybody and it can do the same thing? Or is it still working off of all the data that you guys have compiled over the years?
So a couple of things there. That's a really interesting question. Thanks for asking it. So the longer you do use the app, the idea is it'll kind of pick up a little bit more information. So let's say you run a diet phase, maybe you run a maintenance phase after, and then you go to start another diet. It's probably going to have a better starting point for you that second phase than when you first started the app. Because again, it's kind of able to learn a little bit over time. The other really interesting thing too is, so we were able to pull some data from the app. So we had like 10,000 completed diets, varying in the length, whatever, and how much weight people lost. But we were able to pull some pretty cool data, and what we started to see was that people that were not setting super crazy aggressive goals from the start had better outcomes. And so normally we would recommend people like, hey, maybe you can diet for about 3 months max. And if you go too much past that, you're going to start to fall off a little bit. Well, what we saw in the app actually surprised us a little bit. It was more like 9 weeks was what was the better outcome, which again, I wouldn't have personally guessed that, but it was cool to see that. So now we're able to take some of that data, and now when someone starts the app, we can sort of give them like a gentle nudge, like, hey, maybe you don't want to go super crazy, so hardcore. It's like, scale back just a little bit, thing, because we want people to be successful, right? Like we don't want people to jump in, they go way in overboard. In 2 weeks, they sort of fizzle out, because we're actually trying to look at some data from the app. So what makes people not successful in the app? And that tends to be one of the main things. They try starting way too hard. They try going way too fast, and then they just fall off. It's like, why? Again, it's our job to hopefully better educate people as to not do that.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate that about the app. So I finished my first solid full week this previous week. What's it called? When I'm roughly at macros, I forget what the term is called. At the end of the week, it says it has your number of meals that you were. It escaped me, but I was like 20 for 20 or whatever it was. And then when I go to weigh in, it kind of was telling me dude, you actually lost weight. I set it to try to gain weight. So I'm trying to gain 5 pounds in the next 8 weeks. Try to, keep it pretty simple. But by December, I'd like to be 175. And I was laughing because I'm like, well, app, you haven't met somebody like me. So it straight up told me that hey, you need to up your macros quite a bit. So I'm excited for this week because I get to eat a lot of carbs. I'm pretty stoked for that one. But I do love the fact that the previous week, or I tried to set it up 2 weeks ago to gain, and I didn't really understand the lifestyle settings and all that stuff. So when I started again on another gain phase, it stopped me, and it was like, you just came off of a gain diet. Are you sure you want to do it again? And because I didn't actually do it for the entirety of the diet, I said yes. But I think it's great because I know a lot of people would fall into, or would, hit a bunch of pitfalls when trying to do it just like a Fitness Pal diet app or something. And that's what I love. The difference about this app is it really is like a coach in your pocket. I know you guys have mentioned that before, but if you can, in better words, can you explain just as quick as you want or as long as you want the differences between this app and something like My Fitness Pal, or even the app I was using, which was My Macros Plus?
Yeah. So the real quick summary is, if you use something like My Fitness Pal, it's sort of just like a food diary, right? Like you just kind of tell it whatever you eat. It's not giving you any feedback. I mean, you can tell it that you eat 10 donuts a day and a gallon of milk, and it's not going to say anything. It's just going to be cool. So all we were trying to do is, someone's going to tell us their goals. Again, you can't set super crazy goals in the app. You can't be, I want to lose 50 pounds in 2 weeks. You can't do that, of course. But again, it's going to basically coach you along the way and sort of give you some feedback as to, hey, you put in a couple weights per week. It's going to track where you should be. If you're behind schedule, it's going to say, hey, we think that you should actually, change your nutrients for next week. Are you okay with that? And if you click yes, then it goes ahead and does it. So again, it's just more of the more interaction, right? So it's not just a diary. It tries to give you a little bit of input and sort of tell you what to do, so you're not totally on your own.
Yeah. And does it recognize holidays? Like, I'll be dieting through Thanksgiving. On that day, is it going to be like, go for it?
Not yet. Maybe that's a real possibility.
Yeah, you put your birthday in there, right?
Yeah.
That's good stuff. No, I think that's super interesting, because if you could program in your birthday, we could probably put a little thing in there that says like, hey, happy birthday, enjoy, maybe make a little joke of it, like, hey, PS, macros are free today, like, don't sweat it. That's helpful, right? Like, that's what a coach does. Like, you're working with a live human, like, that's part of the process. So again, it's little things like that I actually think that's a really good idea. The only thing I was going to say on top of that is, like, you can actually, when your weekly review pops up, like, let's say your weight spikes a little bit and you're trying to lose weight, you actually have the option to repeat the prior week, because, let's say you had a birthday, or it was Thanksgiving, it was Christmas, the holidays, whatever, or you're traveling, like, there's a reason probably consistency wasn't that great, adherence fell off. So you can kind of scale that back. So again, that's kind of trying to model the coaching process a little bit in there.
Yeah, that was the word, meal adherence. My bad.
So that's actually really cool. How many, actually, I have two questions. So obviously the app does nutrition, and it also does programming. So I'm assuming that depending on how somebody's trending, right, it will either maybe increase a little bit. Like, does it meld with the programming side of things, the Renaissance nutrition and the Renaissance, I guess, exercise stuff? Like, does it obviously increases training volume over time, or does it increase cardio if they're trying to drop? Like, how does it meld together?
It doesn't do that quite yet. So we don't have a training app quite yet. It's just nutrition. Okay.
My bad.
Many people, no worries, man. We literally get asked that question every single day. That's why I was kind of laughing. It would be cool, long term to have more synergy. Yeah.
But what I will say that it does do, so like, I have my cardio days, and then I have my like lifting days, and I input that in the app as a light day, even though it says like your cardio doesn't count as just a light day. But with that, it still will account for my lighter day, and my macros do change for that day. Sick. So yeah, it's dope. So my cardio days, I am eating way less carbs, but then on my lifting days, I'm having a little bit more carbs. So it's still, if you're honest with the app, it's intuitive, and it follows you, and you follow it, and you have fun.
And what other metrics does it kind of track? Like, does it track like sleep and stuff like that? That stuff that you wouldn't expect it to track?
So it tracks a few things. Probably the main thing that's going to be is your body weight, to kind of measure your progress each week. But you can also program in like when you go to bed, when you do wake up, like how often you work out, how hard those workouts are, sort of just daily activity levels, right? Because if you're someone that sits in an office all day long, it's going to be a little bit different than, if you're a construction worker carrying heavy stuff all day. So it does factor in a little bit of that stuff. The other thing that was mentioned earlier is it kind of tracks your adherence. So again, you can sort of check in each meal. It's just kind of like a little accountability tool, basically. So that way you can kind of see, every so often, someone will take a screenshot of that, put it in like our Facebook group, and their adherence is, 55%. And like, well, hey, I'm not really seeing results. And you go, okay, why do you think that is? Like if you missed half of your workouts, would you expect very good results? Hopefully you would say no. So again, something like that, it's a visual thing. You see it and you go, okay, I could probably improve upon that. And again, that was kind of the idea. Like, well, don't reduce your nutrients. It's like you're not even following the plan in the first place, right? Like, get your consistency in order first, then worry about that a little bit later on. Because again, that's what people get, I guess, somewhat backwards a little bit. They're not doing well, and then they want to sort of get more aggressive, and it's like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, why do you want to do that?
Yeah, we see that a lot, right? I mean, I think that's what we're dealing with here is there's millions and millions of dollars to be made off of human behavior. And I think that's ultimately what you're dealing with through this app is you're trying to encourage some type of human behavior to lean towards the goals that these people are kind of saying that they, want to lean towards, they want to go towards. But it can be very difficult because I think we're trying too hard and we're maybe trying to make too many changes at one time. We want to get stronger and leaner, and we want to lose weight and get ripped up, and kind of all at the same time. And it's a really difficult thing to do when you haven't really done much fitness before. Maybe you don't have a lot of experience with nutrition. Maybe you just don't have, maybe you've never really dieted before, or maybe every time that you have dieted in the past, maybe you failed. And so maybe you have, and maybe every time you exercised, you had a bad experience. Maybe you got hurt. I mean, there's just so many different things that play into this. And I think it's great that you have something that can help people. What do you think is the biggest hurdle? Is it adherence? Is it just getting people just to kind of commit to, what it is they're saying that is their goal?
Yeah, I think that's like 1A, maybe even 1B. Again, the other one goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier. I think people just, again, it's so easy. If we're sitting here right now, totally relaxed, calm, not in the heat of the battle, like lifting, it doesn't hurt or anything. It's easy to say, hey, I have these crazy goals. Like I'm going to hit all these goals. It's so easy to say it right now at this time. Again, put yourself in your shoes a week or, even tomorrow, like while you're lifting or while you're following your nutrition plan, are you going to think the same thing? No, and a lot of people shoot themselves in the foot by getting ahead of that. And they're sitting here and they're really fired up, right? They're inspired, they're motivated. They saw something on social media and they're just like, they're so ready to go. And then they set these really hard goals. And again, they go hand in hand. So I don't even know if it's 1 and 2, it's like 1A, 1B. Again, you get so aggressive that you're basically setting yourself up for failure, that you can't possibly adhere to that because you didn't give yourself a fair shake from the start.
What are some of the craziest transformations that you've seen in terms of individuals that have used it? Because I've seen on the posts from RP, people who've lost hundreds of pounds, just using the app. So what are some of the craziest ones that come to mind when I mention that?
I think the coolest ones are the people that have been around for a couple of years and they have sort of bought into the long-term thinking idea. So the whole, again, this even goes back to what we were just talking about. If you're able to think with a little bit more delayed gratification, you're able to think more long-term and you're like, okay, well, I want to lose 100 pounds. I'm not going to do it all at once. I'm going to start with losing 20 pounds and then I'm going to maintain those results for a couple months. And then I'm going to lose another 20 pounds, maintain for a little bit. And again, you see people really do this. And again, I know it's hard because everyone wants to lose those 100 pounds as fast as humanly possible. Again, there's some trade-offs there, of course, but the people that stick to that plan for the long term, I mean, my God, that's awesome to see because you look at them and they've completely changed their life. They're like an entirely different person. There's maybe a couple of them that jump to the top of my mind. And those are probably the coolest ones to see. It's cool to see people that are relatively lean and then, they get 8-pack abs or whatever. That's cool. But to see the people that started, actually, no, I got a perfect one for you. Ethan Suplee.
Yes.
Dude, again, he lost a ton of weight on his own over a couple of years, again, all sort of tried every single diet out there, whatever. And then, I don't know, he watched a video with Dr. Mike or something, and he's like, this seems a little bit different. And it was really hard because, again, he even said this himself, when you're that big at some point, you have a really hard time with the idea of not getting results and sort of taking a step back and maintaining. And again, he said that was his biggest struggle. And so that was really cool to see. I mean, he's going to have some pictures here pretty soon. He's got legitimate abs now. And he's 250.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool to see.
Okay.
Dude, that's crazy.
It's tough.
300 pounds.
Yeah.
It's tough to, it's always tough to continue to go back to your principles, but in this conversation, I mean, you've done it 5 or 6 times already, where it's a boring and an annoying story for people to hear. That you have to be consistent. That it's got to be long term. You got to have delayed gratification. I just want to get better today. I just want to do it right now, and it's so difficult to continue to go back to that. What are some of your main nutritional philosophies? Do you guys have kind of an overarching kind of principle that you like to follow in terms of counting calories or certain particular views on carbohydrates or fats? Or is it just like, hey, whatever way we can assist somebody, we're going to do that?
Yeah, so maybe with one-on-one coaching, there's a bit more flexibility, but Andrew mentioned this earlier that so your activity level is going to kind of dictate kind of how many carbs you eat, right? So if you're someone like Rich Froning, Matt Frazier, well, okay, you're probably eating a lot more carbs than my mom, who's maybe works out for 20 minutes a day. So you can imagine that that's going to vary quite a bit. Just like the basic nutritional priorities are. Half the battle is just adherence, sort of getting people in the right mindset or thinking about the right things that they can actually stick to it. And then calorie balance is obviously really important. And then, for us, it kind of depends on what your goals are. So if you just want to lose weight, that's a little bit different story than if you're a high level athlete, because if you're a high level athlete, we're probably going to start looking at your macronutrient breakdown, your nutrient timing. It's going to be pretty important. Are you taking the right supplements, things like that? But if you're just a normal person, just wants to lose 10, 15 pounds, the story changes a little bit. And sometimes people get lost in that and they think that it always has to be the same. And it's like, well, no, like I'm not going to tell someone that's brand new to dieting, has never heard of macros. I'm not going to tell them that they need to, time a meal 30 minutes after their workout. Like they may or may not even be working out. So it's like, okay, let's take a step back and you need a bit more flexibility. Hey, maybe we just aim for like 3 meals. We start with some like lean proteins, maybe eat some veggies in there. Again, kind of find out what they like. I mean, nothing super earth shattering there. And again, hopefully if you can educate people a little bit along the way, they're armed with those tools, like you said earlier, where they can kind of run off on their own afterwards and do it themselves easier.
Yeah, one thing that I'm learning to like that I actually very much disliked in the beginning was the fact that the app does push you more towards whole foods. It pushes you towards, actual things versus the diet that I was previously on, where I was making these, fat-free concoctions to keep the calories down, protein high, and, kind of just trying to hack my way into things. But one thing that I was doing every single day essentially was fasting, and then the meal timing thing kind of just caught me by surprise because I've never done that before either. I've never had a pre-workout meal. I've never had the app just told me right now that my next meal is about to be, it's almost due. So that's all really, really new to me, but I do like it. Do you guys think that maybe in the future you'll have like a form of fasting inside the app, or is like the meal timing thing just something that you guys, like part of your philosophy?
If you are a super advanced person when it comes to competing or whatever, it's a little bit more important. Mm-hmm. Other than that, what we've found, again, like you get something out there, you got to get feedback. You got to see what people like. The same sort of theme we keep hearing all the time from people is like, hey, these meal times are a bit too rigid for me. We're like, okay, cool. Totally hear you. So our next update that's coming out, like you can sort of set periods in there where you don't want to eat. So again, right now, theoretically in the app, like if you didn't want to eat until 10 a.m., you could just say you're sleeping until 10. So it's a little makeshift way around that. But with the next update, you can, tweak that a little bit yourself and be like, hey, I wake up at 8, but from 8 to 10, I'm busy. Like I don't want a meal then. And then it just pushes it back a little bit.
Cool. And then, so where did the idea when you guys were building all this stuff out to monetize everything, like where does that knowledge come from? Is it from you? Is it from Mike? Is it both? Like how did you guys come to the idea that like, hey, we're going to charge a monthly fee for this sort of thing, and all of a sudden we're going to have tens of thousands of people subscribe to it?
Dr. Mike kind of helps write all the algorithms with it and things like that. And then he works with the engineers. So people used to buy diet templates. It was like a one-time thing. You'd have to pay like $100 up front. And, here's a really cool thing about the subscription model is we have to work our asses off to make sure that we have a good product and it's bug-free and it's always working, right? So people pay a template, they give you $100 up front, and then whether they use it or not, it's really up to them. And then that's a fine model, right? Like it works. But now with the subscription model, we have to make sure we are doing the best that we can to make sure we have very good customer service. Like, we're very much on top of it. If people, complain about something, or, say that there is a little bug that pops up here and there, because there's always little things that pop up in software development. So it's like, now if someone's paying monthly, it puts sort of the customer, the member, in a much better position. And I think that's pretty cool, because then, like, we're highly incentivized to do our absolute best, because if we fail, if we mess up, like, we're going to be hurting from it. So I think that's really cool, and it's sort of beneficial for both sides.
I like what you were saying about the food timing, and, Andrew saying, and there's probably other people that struggle with staying on top of that timing. But I think something you can also reference is you can always go back to the consistency side of things and say, hey, well, I know that you've struggled with diets in the past, and a lot of times what causes people to go off the rails is hunger, cravings, stress. When we get too hungry, we make really bad decisions. You said it earlier about, it's easy for us to sit here calm, especially like after a meal, and talk about all these great goals that we have after we just ate a giant pizza, but as you get into the thick of it, and as you get into weeks and maybe even months of it, it gets to be really, really difficult. So those people that, sometimes are maybe struggling to get those meals in, I think it's just important that they recognize that missing a meal is a little bit like cheating on your diet in a sense, which doesn't sound intuitive at all, because you're like, well, I'm trying to lose weight, so I should just eat less food. And I'm not saying that you constantly need to be stuffing yourself either. If you're really full from a previous meal, you probably don't, unless you're trying to get those gains, you probably don't really need to, be forcing a lot of food down. But I do think it's important that people do try their best to really stick to the plan as best as they can, because we just know that once something's off a little bit, the spokes of the wheel are going to start to kind of unravel, and they're start to fall apart. And then it might not be that day, but maybe it's 2-3 days later where you find yourself nose down in some Ben and Jerry's, and you're like, man, I don't know where I went wrong. But it was probably 2 or 3 days prior that you skipped out a little bit on the protein or missed a meal or something like that.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Again, if you are skipping meals, well, chances are you're going to be more hungry. And what happens when you're really hungry, right? We're basically fighting, human evolution and all
right.
that. Our bodies are like, you got to eat, like, please eat, for the love of God, eat. Well, what happens when you're really hungry? Like, you're more likely to make bad choices. And then it's just this, I don't know, negative feedback loop. Maybe that's a good term, but you skip a meal, you're more hungry, and then you just, I don't know, keep going down this downward spiral.
For yourself, what do you do with your own nutrition?
Yeah, I mean, I met Dr. Mike back in like 2008. I've kind of been eating somewhat, RP-ish, if you want to call it, ever since. I'll usually eat 4 or 5 meals a day, something like that. Generally, I'll have some type of like workout shake around when I work out. I just really like that. Do I need it? No, I'm not like training super, super hardcore anymore, like I maybe used to. I will say a little change that I've made is I sort of consciously have a bigger meal, like at our family dinner, because we kind of make that like a priority to, try to sit down and like have family dinner together. So I am conscious of that. I'm not like super, married to nutrient timing as much as I used to be. A little more laid back, so to speak.
Currently, if somebody wants to use the app, and it's really cool that it mainly suggests whole foods, like Andrew said. But if there's somebody who's like, I like to eat more fat, or I'm a keto person, or I'm a this vegan or whatever, can you make those adjustments so that it spits out those types of food or meal ideas to you?
Not quite yet.
Okay.
Maybe down the road for sure. Like, so you can kind of potentially make it more advanced, so you have a little more flexibility. Right now it's going to kind of give you more recommendations versus kind of inputting. And again, we have seen people request that. So, we'd be sort of silly not to listen to what people have to say, right? Like, we want to hear what people have to say, what would make it a little bit better tool for more people. And it could very much be a real possibility down the line.
I am interested to find out more about, you kind of mentioned how you eat a little bit bigger of a meal with the family. Is that just to, I guess, just participate in family, period? Like, because I think all of us know what it's like to sit there with some green beans and some chicken and some rice, and everybody else is eating something different. And it's, well, everyone can understand your goals and you can explain to everybody what your goals are. It's still just a little awkward. It's a little bit weird for everybody, and it's not as enjoyable. Whereas if you have, what everyone cooked and what everybody prepared, in my household, we try to have dinner every night. Doesn't happen every night, but we try to make a thing of it. The kids participate in trying to help set the table and stuff. My wife will cook something. I usually participate in cooking something as well. And we try our best to make it a thing, like a family setting. And I also, even if I'm on a specific diet, I'll actually eat maybe a little bit before we eat so that I can still eat what we put on the table and I don't have to be a weirdo. So are you kind of doing that just to participate in the family lifestyle a little bit more?
Yeah, a little bit. And again, so my kids are 8 and 6, so I could explain to them that I have specific goals, but it's going to be totally lost on them. They're sick.
They're like, Dad, it ain't working. Kids are brutal, man.
Exactly. Yeah. Dude, kids are brutal. Yeah. They'll give it to you real for sure. It's actually one of these things that, my wife and I really made a conscious choice of, like, because we didn't do this for the longest time because we just felt like we were so damn busy, working or whatever. And, the kids, they were like both in school, and we just had like a more structured schedule and maybe had a little bit more freedom. Like we weren't so crazy busy. And it's just it's a really nice thing to kind of be able to sit down with your kids and, entire family, whatever. Yeah.
I'm curious, especially when you guys started getting some of your bigger growth as far as users are concerned, what kind of changes did you guys make in terms of, like, I guess, marketing and maybe the type of money you were spending on marketing? Because one common theme you seem to hear with, and I'm not like some business, like Mark would be the business owner here in that sense, but one thing you tend to hear is like, when you start to spend more money on the business, you start to actually do more, make more, etc. Was there anything you guys did new in terms of marketing or different types of things that other people weren't doing that allowed you to grow so much?
Yeah. So I think one of the good things that we had was a pretty good social media presence. And, a lot of people.
You have a great really social media presence, not just you have a great social media presence. I've seen your product, for the last 8 years everywhere from so many different athletes, and you have really loyal athletes. So you guys did an amazing job with that. Yeah.
So I think, someone asked me that the other day, and it's really interesting. So we have an athlete manager now, and he does a really great job. His name's Charlie, and you guys would love him. He's a meathead, just like all of us. But he does a really great job with that. And so it's kind of a couple things there, sort of making sure that we're not just like having people that just kind of take money from us or whatever, and, don't actually use it. Like, that's kind of something we really want to focus on, because then it's more authentic. So, that's one. And again, it goes back to social media, because, and here's the thing that I was going to say earlier, if we're able to do a good job and people are able to achieve their goals, they very freely want to go talk about it on social media and share it because they're proud of their results. They think it's really cool. And I've always been just entirely fascinated by this idea, but like 90% of our content on our social media isn't ours. Like, we don't create it. It's people that are sort of doing it for us. And I've just always been fascinated by that, because I'm not a super creative person. And like, if I had to constantly come up with stuff, I'd be like, guys, what do we do here? So again, that's a big help right there. Just being able to repost stuff, it's really big. But maybe in terms of like other bigger stuff, maybe some bigger partnerships with, some like bigger athletes, like someone like Rich Froning, or, maybe working with, like Wadapalooza or something like that. Like that's probably a bigger thing that, a few years ago, we probably wouldn't have been able to do.
And some of those things you have to be, especially in the beginning, you have to be kind of crafty with them. Like you need a good product. I mean, that's number one. I think that sometimes maybe that people don't understand that part of it, is that it's important that whatever the idea or concept is, that it's good. That's always a great starting position. But then you have to figure out a way to work your way in. And with somebody like a Rich Froning or any of these high level athletes that you've worked with, if you don't really speak their language, it's going to be really tough to get in there unless you just have a good amount of money. You know, if I wanted to infiltrate through like jujitsu, like I could start paying people like a good amount of money and people would be excited, but then it wouldn't have the authenticity. If I was a practicing jujitsu person and I went to a lot of competitions and I really submerged myself in it and I got to know the best coaches, then you could be a little bit more crafty and we can kind of share this kind of have a shared sense of purpose almost, rather than just trying to throw money at people.
Totally. I can give you a really good example of that. So I never really did a lot of CrossFit myself. And one time I was at Rich Froning's house in Tennessee, and, you know, CrossFit's their life, right? I mean, totally. And, you know, they're all like training and doing all this stuff. And yeah, I was there and I was like, oh, I actually like worked out earlier today. So I was just kind of hanging out, but they're just like so into it. And I'm like, I got home and I'm like, that's it. There's literally a CrossFit gym like 2 miles down the road from me. I'm like, nope, I'm going to start going once a week. Like, just got to do it. I mean, and I, you know, I like it because I like the competitive environment of it. I mean, you know, you get someone, you know, I walk in being a meathead, bodybuilder, power lifter, and, you know, I think that I'm strong. And there's like a 40, 45-year-old lady that's just kicking my ass because I have no cardio. And I'm like, okay, I know what I got to do. I gotta, you know, improve my cardio a little bit. There we go. Yeah. So for sure. Agreed.
So switching gears just a little bit, what can you tell me or tell us about your upcoming book? Yeah.
So this is something that I'd not really been working on a whole lot, but I guess 2020, you know, it's kind of been a gut punch to everyone. I think that's fair to say. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
It's been a gut punch.
It's definitely been different, right?
It has been different. So here's how my 2020 went. January, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, and then she had surgery in February. She started chemo in March. And then after that, you know, COVID hit, quarantine hit. So she had to go to like all that stuff by herself. And we were having to homeschool our kids, which is like, you know, again, like just the breast cancer probably would have been bad enough. And then you throw all this other stuff on. And it really made me like kind of step back. And I had been reading, formulating all these different things in my head, kind of, you know, read a bunch of different books over the last couple of years, whatever. Kind of had these like main ideas in my head. It's like, well, what makes people more successful than others? And it didn't matter if it was psychology, it was business, it was finance, it was, you know, war, military history, whatever it was. Like I kept seeing these themes and they kind of overlapped, and I was just keeping notes on them. And then 2020 hit, and I was like, boy, I gotta really kind of change my mindset and approach to things. And it forced my hand, so to speak. And then I had to adjust on the fly. And then, I don't know, like a month into COVID or whatever, like we were in shelter in place, you know, because my wife highly immune compromised because she's in chemo and whatever. So I was like, I think I got to do something with this, because I had all these thoughts and I was applying them, and like we were making it through pretty well. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to sit down. I'm literally not going anywhere for 3 months or 4 months, whatever. And I just sat down and just started writing. And it just kind of, you know, again, it's just like lifting, right? You just kind of go in one day and you just keep going. You just keep showing up. Like that's half the battle. So I kept doing that, you know, wrote it, got 45,000 words. I was like, hey, yeah, I showed it to a couple people and I'm like, am I crazy here or not? They said, I think well, you are crazy, but, you know, maybe not crazy in this regard. And, you know, I sent it to an editor, and, you know, thank God for editors. They make people sound, you know, way smarter than, you know, you look at my rough draft and it's like, sometimes the editor would ask me, he's like, what's this thought or tangent here? And I'm like, ignore that, man.
Like how many sentences in a row can you go without any punctuation? You're like, I don't know. I'm trying to set a record.
Yeah, totally. It's like 6 pages. You're like, that one run-on sentence? I'm like, okay. So again, that's just kind of how it started. And yeah, I'm just It's going to come out probably in November. I'm just really excited because I think it's going to help people because so many people have been negatively impacted by 2020, by coronavirus, by everything, economies in turmoil, all that stuff. I think if you're able to take the bad and somehow find some good of it and make good of it and all that, I think that's going to help a lot of people. So that's kind of like what was the inspiration for it, I suppose.
Did you find it therapeutic?
I did. Looking back, I mean, now I really love to talk about it because I think, we had a choice to make basically. Like we could have played the victim card and just like, hey, you know what? Like this just really sucks. And we could have kind of went down that downward spiral, but we didn't. And we sort of choose to, do all the work required to, get through chemo and all that and, homeschool. And again, like we chose to make a lot of positive out of something that was bad. And again, like that is, I guess, sort of therapeutic and, sort of looking back, I think it probably did help just, not having anywhere to go and all that stuff. I do have a home gym at home. So, thank God I had my sanity through that. But yeah, definitely. I think there's definitely some therapeutic stuff just getting all that out there and, hopefully it'll help a lot of people.
The idea of the internal locus of control that you mentioned earlier, I'm kind of probably assuming that you've had that mindset for a long, long time as is. Like you have control over certain things and you just control what you can and what you can't, you kind of whatever, right? But with 2020, it seems that even when individuals have had that mindset, it just seems that certain things you just can't, let go of. Certain things you just can't just throw out of the mind because there's a lot coming, right? Now for you, with all of this, did you ever catch yourself slipping away from that mindset? And when that did happen, how did you, I'm guessing maybe writing was something that kind of brought you back, but what else brought you back to that thought process?
Yeah, I think everyone slips. Like it's super easy, no matter who you are. I mean, we could talk about us. We could talk about, famous people. We could talk about politicians, whatever. I think everyone slips. And so I think that's maybe part of it is acknowledging that like we are human. No one's perfect. The writing helped being able to work out every day. Like, so I chose to look at it as like, okay, hey, I'm not going anywhere for a while. What can I do? Boom. I'm going to make sure my habits, my habits are going to be on point. I'm waking up a little bit earlier each day. I'm reading more each day. I'm making sure I do some cardio each day. I'm lifting. I'm like doing all these things. I kind of have this checklist, on my phone, and I'll make sure I'm checking them off every single day. So for me, I was just like, I refuse to set back and sort of be a victim. Like that's not going to happen. That's never going to be me. So it's like, what can I do? What can I actually control here? And again, my wife had the same thing. She's probably a little bit more pessimistic mindset in general. And again, like that was a big focus. Well, like now let's shift to a more positive mindset, because if you are more positive, you probably have more hopefulness that what you do, that you can actually change your outcome. And again, I think that's big. Like no matter what your obstacles are, whether it's fitness, whether it's, battling cancer or, even business, like I think there's just some sort of key universals that overlap on all that. And that's kind of like what I found or stumbled upon. And that's kind of just like the main idea of the book.
Okay. Did you find it maybe helpful in a way to approach for you and your wife to approach cancer as if to kind of say like, hey, look, a lot of people have had cancer before. Like, I'm sure the initial blow of it is like nearly impossible to overcome. But once you kind of get the news and you're like, okay, well, here's the treatment plan. Let's go through with the treatment plan and let's just kind of take it day by day, the best that we possibly can. Other people have been through this. Other people have survived it. It's not really necessarily helpful to be super sad about it, super upset about it. Yeah. We should try to be, even though it's hard to say and hard to do, was that kind of the mindset going into it?
Yeah, I think that's part of it. You have to take it one day at a time, because it's so easy if you look at the bigger picture to just be completely overwhelmed, like, oh, there's just like too much. But again, you just, what's right in front of me? What can I do right now? What can I do today? And just boom, do that. Let's just get through it one day at a time. Because again, yeah, it's like, and again, I wasn't the one going through it, right? So it's, a little bit easier for me, but yeah, it's so easy to kind of get lost in that, just because sometimes, and I think this, happened, I think it's a pretty normal thing, but you sort of just start to wonder, like, well, why me? Like, it's just not fair. And that's a really slippery slope to go down, because if you do, again, so the first time I went to chemo with my wife, I remember I was sitting next to her, and like, my mindset was, I'm going to be here for like 4 hours. So I got my food, I got my snacks with me, whatever, but like I also have books with me. I'm like, dude, I'm gonna learn my ass off here. Like, if this is the hand I'm dealt, like, I'm gonna make some good of it. And the people that were sitting next to me, it was like an older couple, probably like, I don't know, 60s, 70s maybe. And their approach, their mindset was, all they were doing was bickering and sort of fighting and complaining. And I thought to myself, boy, is that the route that we want to go? And I was like, no, what good could possibly come of that? You're going to kind of have that victim mentality, and you're just going to sit back and sort of get depressed that this happened to you? Like, no, what can you do now? Like, what can you control? Let's do that. Let's knock it out. And I mean, knock on wood, my wife's done with treatment now. And, as in probably a couple months ago now, I think it was August was her last treatment. So like, I think we're in the free and clear. So.
Yeah, it's tough to have that mindset, but kudos to you. That's amazing. That I think it's interesting too that you've been learning all this stuff, and that sounds like it was helpful to your wife, because you mentioned that her mindset previously was just maybe a little bit more negative to begin with, correct?
Yeah, she definitely had the more, if you have the optimism versus pessimism mindset, it was kind of like the yin and yang. I'm, probably much more positive. She calls herself a realist.
Right.
Which is helpful, right? Like, of course, it can't be all sunshine and rainbows. Like, no, there are obstacles to overcome and all that. But just kind of having the right approach and mindset, I think, is a really big help on that. Well,
opposites attract too, right? Like, if you guys were the same, you would probably be like the couple that was bickering back and forth.
Maybe, yeah, for sure. But like that really stood out to me when I was sitting there, and I'll probably never forget it either, because it was just. I was like, okay, I know definitely now what I don't want to do.
I think there's two different ways to look at it. Like, maybe they're that way because they are older, and they're like, like, this shit's happening to me, and this could be the end, right? But another way to look at it is they could also say, hey, I'm grateful that I lived this long, Boom. It's awesome. I'm 60, I'm 70. I have grandkids, or whatever it might be. And, being around someone like Jason Khalipa and seeing his daughter go through, and seeing that family go through what they went through, it was unbelievable. There was kids that would get up and give a speech, and they would talk, and they would talk from the heart, and they weren't crying. They were pumped. They were happy. They would tell you like a cool story. They were like, maybe they didn't understand the weight of what was going on, but they would talk about dying. They would talk about like, hey, if I only have 30 days to live, this is how I want to live my life. And you're like, holy shit. And there's not a dry eye in the room. Everyone's just gets, completely devastated by hearing a child say that. But you're like, damn, if they can be strong and have that mindset, then maybe the rest of us should stop being a bunch of pussies.
100%. And it's actually really glad that you brought that up. So one of the things, so if you read like a bunch of positive psychology stuff, that's like one of the fundamental things is just being able to be grateful. And when you look at it from that approach, again, it's like, oh, you could complain that, all this stuff's happening. Well, it's like, no, like, I'm actually grateful that, we're still here. RP's doing well, again, like we're able, like, my kids are still here. Like, we're able to have family dinner every night. Like, when you approach it like that, all of a sudden your mindset shifts, and it's no longer, oh, woe is me. You're like, okay, I'm here. Like, let's do this. I'm ready to go.
How can somebody essentially like train their mindset to think more this way? Because I would hate for like, I don't know, like just for myself, like some kind of, event like this, like what happened to you, to like, okay, now it's the time to like turn it on and, think this way. So hopefully nothing ever happens like that. But for somebody listening who maybe is the pessimistic or is the negative person, is there like certain books that you'd recommend or anything like that to where they can actually like start following this type of mindset?
Yeah, so Martin Seligman is a really good author to follow. He's kind of like the godfather of positive psychology, so that's a good place to start. Really smart dude, University of Pennsylvania. So, Ivy League school, of course. Also, an interesting thing is there's a lady, I think she's a professor at Yale, another Ivy League school. They have a free class. I think it's like, I forget the exact name of it, but it's something about just keys to happiness, let's call it. It's taught by Laurie Santos, Laurie. It's totally free. Like, this is a course that they teach at Yale. It's like one of the most popular courses that they have. But when COVID hit, I believe that made them put it online for free because they knew, again, with all this stuff going on, that it was probably going to be a very big impact on people. And then, it's one of the things they talk about, like something even as simple as like savoring, like, while you're there, while you're having a meal with your family, just like being thankful for it, sort of savoring it, not just, being on your phone and, I guess that kind of ties into maybe a little bit of like mindfulness stuff. But again, they talk a lot about the being grateful as well. So that's probably a couple of good resources.
What you mentioned there in terms of like the savoring thing, it's just like, I guess the idea of maybe just being present in the moment rather than having your mind somewhere else, thinking of all the different types of problems you have. Like, I've noticed, honestly, like when I can be there, it makes a very big difference with how I just feel much happier versus when I'm thinking of something that may be going wrong with somebody I'm working with or whatever. And like even my significant other can tell my mind is somewhere else and it just causes stress, man.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, listen, we're probably all guilty of this, but and I'm certainly guilty of this. I've tried to maybe not be as guilty, but again, like my kids are 8 and 6, so they're, like always around, always, super high energy. And it's like, sometimes I got to work, but, sometimes I find myself like, I'm not actually working. Like, let's be honest. Right. And then it's like, your kids are trying to talk to you. You're like, oh, damn it. It's kind of like, got to put your phone down and be like, okay, let's do this, because it's so easy, right, to sit there and, let's scroll through Instagram today. Like, what stupid stuff can we find today? So, there's just all sorts of little stuff, man. But I agree. I think that's really important.
I think for every moment that you can concentrate on, like, what it is you're currently doing, it leaves you that much further from your past, and so the things in the past you can't control. You mentioned, having control over certain things. We don't have control over that. We don't have a lot of control over like what might happen. We don't really know. There might be some control that you can have. You can control some variables, but I find it really interesting. Anxiety is, stress over things that haven't happened. Depression is anxiety over things that already happened. You really don't have control of either one. So why do we give a fuck? And the answer is because we're human, and that's
we're human. Exactly.
Yeah. We worry and we're not sure about our choices. Where an animal might have an animal instinct and they're pretty damn sure that they made the right decision. They don't have to maybe think about it as much, where with us, everything that we do or everything that we did or everything that we said or we think about things you're going to say. I mean, how about that one? When you think about when you have to have a tough conversation with somebody and you build up tons of anxiety, then you're like, I need to talk to this person. And then you do talk to them and it goes completely opposite of what you thought. You're like, I don't really want to say this to them. It's going to hurt their feelings and so on. And then you tell them and they're like, oh, I'm glad you brought that up because I think A, B, and C. And like, I think this would make everything a lot better. And you're like, You're like, I was sweating it for a week, before we got into this conversation.
Totally. I think that whole, again, how do you kind of train this or work on it? Well, it's acknowledging that, right? So when something happens, right, someone gives us feedback. Let's say it's not the greatest feedback. What's your initial reaction? You're pissed, right? That's normal. We're human. We want to think like that, but it's sort of catching ourselves thinking like that, being able to like maybe just take a slight step back and be like, okay, they gave me this feedback. Well, one, is it true? Is it not true? Okay, well, what should I do now? Should I respond very angrily towards them and really emotional? That's probably not the best idea. Let's take a step back, think about it a little bit. And again, like I'll give an example, man. I'm a really big Michigan football fan. Like I went to school at Michigan, whatever. I'm just like die hard, everything. And I was terrible watching Michigan football games. Like my family was like, "You're not a good person to be around with games on," because I'd be like swearing and stuff. And now I'm just like, okay, that was a year ago. Where am I at now? And I'm like, God, I don't really give a shit that much about Michigan football. Like, I don't have any control over it. I'm not out there playing. Like, why do I care? And it's like, if you just acknowledge it and you just, Mark, I'm sure you can probably enlighten me here, but you just, as you get older, you learn and you just become more mature and sort of your perspective changes, I'm sure. But like, I'm seeing that now. It's kind of mind blowing to me, but I mean, I'm sure, all this stuff's been around for thousands of years, right? Like, I go back in time, it's like the same stuff, which is just funny to see, but it just kind of sometimes takes something in your life to kind of flip that switch. And then you go, oh, okay, duh.
Yeah, there's a lot of things I think you can utilize as a practice, as a form of practice. And for you, it might be watching a football game. I think what is okay for people to do too is to recognize that certain things charge them up and to maybe just not really watch it or not participate in it. So like the news, maybe social media, like I do think that you're better off arming yourself so you can handle more shit and not necessarily have to avoid stuff. But at the same time, if you find yourself getting really frustrated every time you go to do this particular thing, or you're always telling yourself ahead of time that you're already going to be frustrated when you go to do this certain thing, then you might want to either figure out a way to educate yourself so you're not frustrated with that anymore, or to maybe even just avoid it altogether. How do you deal with social media type stuff, and has that improved over the years?
It's improved a little bit. It's something that I'm very much still working on. I got a real good friend. He actually helped me out with a little bit of the book. He was a SEAL, and he does some like leadership coaching and all that. And I'll text him every now and again. I'm just like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And he'll kind of just explain things to me in a different way that I go. And it's funny too, because this just happened the other day. My wife will talk to me about something, again, like if you have cancer, it's sort of always in your mind where like you're always thinking about it, and you get an ache in your arm and like, well, you go to worst case, right? Because this happened to you. And like, I'm a little bit more detached from it, relatively speaking. And I'm just like, you can't really think like that. That's just not a great thing. And then like, I find myself doing the exact same thing when it comes to social media. And, my buddy's texting me and he's like, well, just kind of think about it a little bit differently or do this. And I'm like, well, that just makes too much sense, because it's so easy when it's kind of happening to someone else and you're a little bit detached from it. Like when you're in it, right? When we're in the heat of the battle, it's a whole different story. And so that's just, to me, it's funny. And again, it's the more you learn and can be a little bit more aware. And, Mark, I like that you mentioned, you keep practicing it, right? And like, you see some of these things that keep happening every day or whatever. And it becomes a little bit easier over time. I mean, my God, it's just like lifting, right? You don't walk in day one to the gym, right? Like all this stuff's kind of universal. It's not, just this or just that. It's like, if you can probably apply this stuff to everything.
Is there anything you've done to like, I guess, control it a little bit better in your life? Or have you ever necessarily been an individual that has had issues with social media, or has it always just been kind of like a tool for you?
I mean, it's always been an issue. I'm on it entirely way too much. I'm sure you guys can probably relate, but the one thing that, and again, I'm not perfect at this, of course, but generally speaking, in the morning, I'll try not to really pay much attention to social media. And that's actually why I like getting up just a little bit earlier, because social media is not really that active in the morning. And I can just kind of set my phone off to the side, or, maybe listen to an audiobook or a podcast or whatever. And I like that. Like, okay, I'll give myself a little bit of time, and then I'll kind of get on and then, go exploring and responding to stuff. But that's not really something I love to do first thing in the morning right out of bed.
Gotcha.
It's tough to detach yourself from the mindset of like, I'm working, I'm, I don't know what it's like to be a female, but from a male perspective, you're like, this is what I do. I'm bringing home the bacon kind of thing. And I'm, I'm working, and you kind of just, I think a lot of adults do that, men and women, where when they're on their phone, their kid's trying to get their attention. They're like telling the kid they're working, but I think you're better off trying to set some boundaries and set some specific times that you're actually working. And I don't really think that scrolling through social media is really working, even though we're going to try to sell ourselves that because we want to justify why we're on there. But and it very well could be. I mean, you could be checking out the competition. You could be making a relevant post that's important to your company. But, can you put your phone aside for a little bit and pay attention to what's going on currently? I mean, it's not like social media is going to disappear out of nowhere. So it'll be there later on. For myself, I've been really fortunate. I've been able to escape it. And it's been amazing, because I have people that just post for me. So that's been really helpful. But there's no escaping all of it. It's I'm still on like YouTube. And so I'll still see stuff here and there. But it's actually been amazing to not even know anything about what anyone's doing. I don't even know who. Someone will say, "Hey, you see so and so did this or so and so posted that." I'm like, nope. And you learn that it just doesn't matter that much, and that actually has been surprising to me that it's pretty irrelevant. And then if somebody mentions it like 20 times or something, then maybe I'll try to check it out or something. If I think it's something that I need to see or something that's fun or funny, then maybe I'll try to check it out. But it's been amazing to be distanced from it for a while now.
How long have you been doing that? I'm just kind of curious as to that.
Probably about 6 months or so, yeah, about 6 months. Yeah. I tried before and it didn't work.
Yeah.
I tried before and I came back and forth, but it's been helpful to me to like pass over the reins, and then just from a business owner perspective of just sometimes giving people an opportunity and just saying like, you're actually probably going to do a better job at this than I do, rather than me saying, oh, it has to be me that does it. I'm going to do a better job. You don't know how to do it like me. Like, why would I say that when I mean, if you hired the person to handle certain things specifically, then they should be the right person for the job. And if they're not, then you might have to find somebody else. But just trying to empower them with, hey, I think you're going to do a better job of this than I am anyway.
Yeah, it's funny listening to other people say this, similar things, and you kind of think, okay, yeah, like, yep, check. Like I'm kind of making mental notes on my side of. It's always easier to hear from other people, right? Than tell yourself the same stuff. It's hard, yeah.
Yeah, very much like your Navy SEAL friend. Mark is that guy for me. Recently, I was going through a house sale and purchase situation where I was freaking out, and I was like, man, if it doesn't appraise at the right amount, blah, 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 blah. And he's just like, well, hey, you don't have control over any of it, so why are you stressed out? I'm just like, all right, cool. I guess you're right. But if somebody doesn't have that, where can somebody turn to try to find a little bit of some of this like guidance?
I mean, nowadays it's 2020. There's just so much good stuff on the internet. I mean, think about YouTube. Think about just all the free content out there. I mean, anything you could probably want to learn about, there's going to be stuff out there. I mean, you can probably... Google, just like Google whatever you want to find out. I'm sure people are going to pop up, like, read a book by them, or, watch some videos, TED Talk, something like that. Like, go watch, go learn, get that knowledge. It sort of just gives you that awareness. And that's probably the first step. And once you have that, just hopefully use that sort of positive momentum to keep going.
I hate to rewind just a little bit, but I'm really curious about this. At the point of people see RP Strength with the tens of thousands of users, and it's a 7-figure business, and you said 50 employees, but in the building process of it, were there any very notable moments where you guys were like, all right, we got to shut this down? Or did that ever really happen? Or were you guys just so entrenched in it that you just never really felt the need or felt that you would ever quit to get to where you are currently?
I don't know know if we hit like that point, but we definitely had some different products that we tried out that just completely tanked. Just no one gave a crap about. It's funny. Dr. Mike created these things called like hunger diet templates, and that's kind of excuse food towards more at nighttime. He's like, "Oh, this is going to be great, man. This is exactly what people want." People want results, really. Now, again, we were able to sort of learn from that and go, okay, well, like this by itself, probably not a great idea. This main thing that we have, people really like it. Okay, how do we sort of merge the two together a little bit, kind of take some of the good parts of both, and eventually, iterated a couple times. We ended up with like the diet templates 2.0 and then 3.0, and then eventually it morphed into the app, and the app can do a lot more of all the stuff that the templates couldn't. So I wouldn't necessarily say there was like that crucial moment, but yeah, we definitely, that's the other thing too, right? That's actually a big part of the book is like, no matter what you do, you're going to fail, right? And so if you know that going in, you look at things a little bit differently. You go, okay, well, I'm not afraid of failure because a lot of people are, and they don't ever take action to get going in the first place. But if you know you're going to fail and you have the right mindset that if you do fail, you just kind of adapt, pivot, learn from it, and keep moving on, that's just a much better approach, I think.
It kind of all ties into what you said in the beginning, is that your app is continuing to learn, and it's learning through error correction. Somebody goes to use a certain part of the app, especially I'm sure early on, and someone says, yo, like this thing's a piece of shit. Like it's not working. It's giving me weird numbers. It told me I need to eat 785 grams of protein or whatever. But over a period of time, it advances, it gets better. And I think that that's important for people to recognize that we can do that as people as well. Like you error correct. That's what we do. You mess up, you screw up, you did too many sets of biceps. You can't straighten your arm out anymore. Or the week before you didn't work out enough and you gained weight and you went backwards or whatever it might be, but you can make those corrections. You can, as you go along, you can improve.
Sure. Again, that if you're aware of it, because again, I just think back to, think of all the people that are afraid of making mistakes. And so they never even get going in the first place. And again, they kind of get into that, mental, maybe negative self-talk. And it's like, they basically convince themselves that they're going to fail and that they never even get going. And boy, I'm sure there's some really good ideas out there that have just never come up because the person just never chose to move forward with it. And so, again, just real quick on the book. So, it's kind of like a pyramid like we have with the nutritional priorities, but at the base of it is hard work, right? And like, that's the most fundamental aspect of being successful, because no matter what it is, like, let's say you have an idea, ideas are just ideas. Like, you actually have to put them into practice, right? I mean, we could have the greatest training program in the world ever written, but it means jack shit if you don't go into the gym and actually do it, right? Like then you just, and again, now maybe that's a little bit of a critique of, the evidence-based crowd. They like to maybe overthink things a little bit, and they sort of undervalue the how much hard work actually matters, right? You look at some of the more old school people and it's like, well, they had that in spades. So maybe trying to morph the two together, take some of the best of both approaches, and maybe that is the optimal way to go, so to speak.
What's the name of the book, and where can people find it?
Yeah, so it's going to be called Fit for Success, and it's going to come out probably November 16th. That'll probably just be on rpstrength.com.
Nice. And your wife is doing pretty good now, you said?
She's crushing it, man. She's crushing it. Yeah.
Did you guys make any changes to her diet, her exercise? Were there some changes to any of that to help with, I guess, to help advance her position so she could feel better faster, kind of thing?
Yeah. So that's a really interesting one. When you're in chemo, they just kind of tell you to eat whatever you can, because you might not even want to eat. You might just feel like complete crap some days. So that one's tricky. They generally just say, do whatever you can. Here's the messed up thing, right? And this is kind of, it was really hard for my wife to avoid this. She was a healthy person, right? She eats better than I do. right? And she exercised, right? She, has competed in figure and stuff. Like, she was a healthy person. And that's the part that kind of really got to her, is like, she was doing all the right things. And then sometimes shit just happens. And that's really unfortunate, right? It sucks. But like, that's the thing, is she's, it makes her question herself. Like, well, if you're already doing all these things and some shit happens to you, what do you do after that? Again, that's just kind of going back to, I mean, you can't really control, right? If something like that's ever going to come back, you can, again, you just try to eat well. You try to exercise, try to not be super stressed out, have a more positive mindset, things like that. But beyond that, you can't really control it. So she's maybe made a few small tweaks with some foods that she'll eat, but like nothing super crazy. Again, it's just kind of getting back to the basics, mostly whole foods, exercising several times a day. I mean, she's like really into gardening. That's kind of her, zen, so to speak.
Was there any like looking into a ketogenic diet, or is there not enough evidence in a ketogenic diet to help someone's position that might have cancer?
That's a really interesting question. I can't speak to that a lot. She definitely heard that from some people. Again, it's one of these things where, she went to one doctor and he was, a little all over the place, but that was something he suggested. But like her main oncologist wasn't really a fan of that approach. And so it's really hard because you're hearing conflicting things by experts. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I don't know how to eat when it comes to cancer. Like, right. You stick to the basics the best you can, and she'll ask me, she's like, what do you think? And I'm like, listen to your main oncologist. That's kind of the best that I can give. And, I know a couple doctor friends, and I would kind of run it by them, and they're just kind of like, yeah, you do the best you can. You eat mostly healthy and exercise. Beyond that, no one's really sure. And that's where, again, maybe 10 years from now, because cancer is so prevalent, again, we'll either maybe have some type of like cure, which would be awesome, or maybe they're just going to have a lot better advice if something does happen, like, hey, actually you can do these couple things. So, again, science, you learn, hopefully evolve, keep learning. 5-10 years from now, we might have much better answers.
Obviously 2020 has caused a lot of pivots for a lot of people, a lot of changes. When you were heading into the year and you had all the things that maybe you wanted to try to get done this year and try to do, with Corona, did your goals change at all? Did you pivot? Were you still able to hit the things you wanted to hit? I'm assuming, I don't even know, did a lot of the things that happened this year, I guess that spurred the book, but were you able to do what you wanted to try to do this year so far?
For the most part, I mean, I don't think I would say it's ideal. We definitely saw a little bit of an impact in the spring. For example, we had like a gym-free training program, and it was just for females. I mean, no one really ever bought it just because most of our crowd's already in the gym and whatnot. And, as soon as COVID hit, like we had plans to make the male version already, but it was kind of like, okay, this is obviously a really big thing. Like we need to get this done. And, that it ended up doing really well. Again, now people are sort of back to the gym, so it's kind of trailing back off. But, that was one like fundamental thing that we had to change and shift pretty quickly because, again, everyone was asking us, they're like, what do I do at home? Like, I can't go to the gym. I can't, leave my house or whatever. And we're like, okay, like, do you have some dumbbells? Yeah. Oh, we would see really creative stuff. Some people were using their kids or, putting them on their shoulders and squatting them or whatever. And yeah, so that was probably the biggest thing that we changed in, along with some of the education, like, hey, if you're at home and can't go to the grocery store or whatever, like, it's not the end of the world. Just try to eat what you have and don't go too crazy.
Gotcha.
Congrats on all the success, man. It's been awesome to watch.
Well, likewise, man. Thanks so much.
Great to have you on the show, and hopefully we can have you out here to super training sometime.
Dude, I love that. Here's the other thing. I haven't traveled at all in 2020. So I'm itching to get back out there and do some stuff for sure.
It seemed like that tragedy happened with Kobe Bryant, and then the whole world just went on fire and just everything went to shit.
Yeah.
Dude.
Ever since that point.
I love Kobe, man. I love Kobe. Yeah.
I know. Brutal. Where can people find you?
At RP Strength on Instagram.
All right, man. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Take care.
Sir.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
Cool.
Some great stuff.
It is some great stuff. Him and Mike Israetel have definitely rubbed off on each other
Oh my
a
God.
lot through
They're
the years.
so chill. They're so like calm. Like,
And when he
The
said
cadence.
that he's like, yeah, we sound the same. I think he meant like some of the like information that they give, or but I'm like, no, you guys sound like
Literally.
the same person.
Yes,
I
they
was like,
sound
oh,
like the
shit.
same guy. It's dope. They're both cool,
The
but
cadence for sure. Yeah. Yeah, both of them are great.
that's great to hear that his wife is doing
Yeah,
well,
thank
and
goodness.
hopefully that continues. It's got to be a rough thing to go through. And cancer is such a weird thing. I think there's a lot of diseases, a lot of illness that we just don't know enough about yet. You can't really just control everything through nutrition. You can't control everything through the way that we exercise and everything. And I maybe you can control stuff a little better. Maybe we'll learn more as we go forward. I've heard, many times before that a ketogenic diet can help with cancer, but like, I don't know to what degree, and I don't know how much proof or evidence there is of that. I know our buddy Ron Penna had the Keto Pet Sanctuary. That's with dogs, it's not necessarily with people. So there's a lot more research that needs to be done. But what I do think is cool is, and I've heard this repeatedly, is that, and he mentioned, the next 10 years, and they've been saying that for a long time with cancer. But I do believe in the next 10, 15 years that we won't maybe have a cure, because it's hard to really have a cure because there's so many different types of cancer. I just think that we'll see less and less people die from it, which will be amazing. I was watching something on 60 Minutes. God, I feel old saying 60 Minutes. Watching shows like that, or 2020, right? Like those are old people shows. But there was a guy that was on. He did the Genome Project. I don't know how you say that word. But he's the one that figured out the coding of humans. It was freaking wild. But he basically kind of in a way like reversed or cured sickle cell anemia, which is absolutely fucking crazy. And he did so by, it's actually a really wild story, and I'm going to mess this up, but I'll kind of go for it anyway. So there's on your DNA, there's a T and there's an A, and just one letter, if one letter is off, if one of those letters is off, you will have sickle cell anemia. Sickle cell anemia is your red blood cells kind of turn into, it turns into what looks like a sickle. It kind of looks like a little mini boomerang, and then it builds up in certain areas, and then it causes tons of pain. And you could have pain anywhere from it. You could have pain in your forearm, your cheeks, your leg. I mean, it could be anywhere. And for some people, they have it all over their body, just tremendous amounts of pain. They were like, scale of 1 to 10, what's this like? And they're like, is there an option for 20? Like it just kills. And it mainly happens in Black people, and it happens a lot of times with people with African descent because of malaria. I guess it's a defense mechanism against malaria, which is kind of crazy too. They didn't really say whether I guess other people can get it, but they didn't have anybody else on the show other than people that had African descent. But it was wild because there's these kids that are just in tons of pain, and all they can do is give them like morphine and stuff like that. And they, the doctors don't know what the kid's going through because you don't know what the person has right away, a lot of times. And so these kids are saying they're in tons of pain. Well, they don't want to prescribe them pain medication. But then when they see how severe the pain is that they're in, then they start prescribing pain. And then you have, 9-year-old kid that's hooked on pain medication. And so it's just a really sloppy thing. But anyway, this guy had figured out a way to reverse sickle cell anemia by basically giving people stem cells, but also I think there was something in there with HIV, which was really wild. And so he was able to kind of make this blend of stem cells, and kind of infuse the stem cells into the person, and it would reverse their DNA. And it's been working on a lot of people. It's been crazy, but the story was absolutely mind boggling to watch. I was like, holy, so what are they going to be able to do in the future? And this guy was saying that there's 7,000, he's like, there's at least 7,000 other diseases that are similar, that he felt were similar enough to this to where they could fix them. So it'd be interesting in the future to see, what's possible with some of these stem cell research and stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what got P Prodigy from Mobb Deep. He died of sickle cell.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of, like, I have sickle cell trait. A lot of it's testable. A lot of West Africans have sickle cell trait. It's just if it actually happens,
like manifests and turns into something.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, that's great. Cause like you hear about, not you hear about it, but like the like rumors like, oh yeah, like Magic Johnson survived, AIDS or whatever. And it's like, oh, they do have the cure, but they're, they don't want to put it out cause then they'll lose money or whatever. So the fact that this guy was like, he's actually doing it, it's like,
right.
Hey, maybe they're not all full of shit.
I wonder, I want to look into that. I wonder what the HIV thing's about. Like, what did that have to do with it?
Yeah, I can't remember. I can't remember what that had to do with it, but, yeah, I wish I could remember that part of it, but I think I can't remember what it was. But anyway, I just think it's fascinating. It's cool to see like all the just different, modern technology being able to assist people. And I hope that, they can figure out something with cancer, because cancer is just so odd.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't have any clue on why the hell I got it. And some people, might think it's because of technology or satellites or microwaves or we just don't know. Yeah. Your phone. Yeah. You're like, oh, put this over here. We just don't. We don't know.
Sucralose.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah.
I hope that one's not true.
Right. I know.
Because damn.
I know. But anyway, yeah, it was great having Nick on the show today. What a great business, that they started up years ago. And it's great to see the success that they've had with RP Strength.
Mm-hmm. And just the way he was able to, like, Nsima said, pivot in 2020, to start putting together a book after something happened. Like that's, I can't imagine trying to stay positive through something like that. Like what that takes, I hope I never have to do that, but we have examples of somebody that did do it and did it very well.
Yeah. It seems like he has a calm enough personality, even though he said that he can get fired up about stuff. It seems like he's calm enough to where he was able just to be like, oh, fuck it, I'll write a book.
Yeah. Yeah. Just by talking to him, he doesn't seem like a very reactionary person. But that thing he mentioned about gratefulness, and you mentioned that one day here too before a podcast, that really makes a big difference, peeps. Like it really does make a really, really big difference. Even if you're not going through something, just like making it a habit to maybe every morning or something, just think about multiple things you're really grateful for, that you're really happy about, and it can really shift how your day continues to go as shit piles onto you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things in a given day that we take for granted. Take for granted that your car starts, and just the list of things goes on and on and on. That you have a refrigerator full of food.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people that are grateful and happy with not a lot. They might live in a different country and they might not have access to the same things that we have here, and they're pretty damn pumped. Mm-hmm. And then here we are getting pissed because they put too much cream in our coffee or something. You know what I mean? Like,
this 4G is not fast enough.
Yeah, right. And it's going to happen. I mean, it's just, it's part of human nature. It's going to happen. You're always going to be a little disappointed with whatever the hell your current position is, but
these food stamps don't buy diapers.
Straight up, nothing can beat the feeling if you really want to eat some cereal, but someone drank all the milk. There you have a good reason to actually be depressed. Like, that is depression.
Where's the milk?
Where's the fucking milk? You can't drink cereal with water. Mm-mm. Who does that? Savages.
Protein powder. I've done that.
There's no real, I know, and there's not really a replace. I mean, you can try to do stuff, but it just doesn't work.
No.
There's no replacement for milk. Or well, what about when somebody puts it back in the fridge though, and it's like there's like nothing left in there?
Yeah, it's like the last bits, and you have to. I've used that milk with water and tried to save it, but no.
I apologize to everyone in my household because I do that. Well, I'm not. I don't.
My kids put stuff back completely empty. I don't know why. Like they like they'll eat like the last of like a granola bar or something. And I'll just be sitting there like there's nothing in there.
Oh man.
And so for me, like
I'm like, what? Why would they do that?
I'd be so mad.
I'll measure stuff out, and I need X amount of almond milk or whatever, and it's like, well, I'm not. I don't want to use that much extra in this recipe,
It's
but
like
I
20
also
calories.
I can't throw it away because I'm cheap, so it's going right back in. I mean, and I will go back and use it myself, but if somebody else, it's like really.
Stephanie, bless you for dealing with this,
I
man.
think you need to like pour it into like a glass or something so that everyone can kind of see how low it is. You know what I mean? Like a small glass.
Well, the carton should have like a window, like that has the level that's visible. Yeah, like they do on like the big 5-quart oil jugs. They have like a line that shows how much is left.
That's dwindled down.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you want to take us on out of here, Andrew?
On that note, thank you everybody for checking out today's episode. Again, please hit that like button if you guys appreciate today's episode. Huge shout out to Element Electrolytes. I was sipping on some throughout this whole episode. For more information on them, please hit the link down in the YouTube and Facebook description, as well as the podcast show notes. Or just head over to drinklmnt.com/power project. Check out the value bundles, because that's like buying 3 boxes getting 4 boxes for the price of 3. On top of that, you get free shipping. Hit us up at Mark Bell's Power Project on Instagram, at MB Power Project on Twitter. LinkedIn, Facebook, all over the place. My Instagram is at I am Andrew Z. Nsima, where you at?
By the way, Mark and Andrew, good call on the chocolate electrolytes and the protein powder.
It works pretty damn good, right?
It's like so good.
You wouldn't have expected that.
Gives it like a caramel flavor.
Yes, It's a salted like chocolate caramel flavor.
Yes.
That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah.
It was dope. I had it 3 days ago. It was really good. But at Nsima Inyang on Instagram and YouTube, at Nsima Inyang on Twitter, Mark.
At Mark Smelly Bell. Strength is never a weakness. Weakness never a strength. Catch y'all later.